My name is Franklin D. Stafford Sr., Middleton, Idaho. I'm Franklin D. Stafford. I'm involved with judicial corruption, law enforcement corruption, civil corruption, and Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals corruption. I want to tell a story to the people that I helped get 360 acres back. I didn't charge for it. I was sitting in an Amanda meeting with a lady, and this woman, I mentioned Morfitt. Tears started coming to her eyes. And I said, "What's wrong?" Her and her husband was there. She said, "Morfitt's screwing us out of 360 acres that I've had all my life. I was born and raised on it." I said, "What are you talking about?" She said, "Well, my mother died, and my dad and my mother and dad, we were in a company with this 360 acres, and we had been for 40 years. But when Dad died, well, half of the quarter went, Mom had 50%, and we had 50%. Then when Mom got sick, she decided that she'd sign the whole thing over to me and my husband, which she did, signed a deed and everything. But when Mom died, my brother come in and filed it. She wasn't able to sign it over, and he thought it was his, so it went in front of Morfitt. Morfitt just ordered, after she paid $52,000 to her attorney, he sold her them down the tube, agreed with Morfitt that the place should be put back, she should sign over the deed and put back in the estate and be sold in the estate and split up amongst the brothers and everybody. And at that time that was happening, she was telling me this, Morfitt was going to be the administrator of the estate, and Jane Morfitt with Silverhawk Realty was going to be the real estate agent selling the 360 acres at this time. Well, none of that took place, because I sat down with her and we went and filed paperwork. And she went, and she was smart enough and had been through 3 or 4 years of this rat race with her attorney and $52,000, that she went in there and filed those papers herself against Morfitt and that. And he accidentally gave up everything and let her keep the place. Now, this took us 2 years. But I didn't get a dime. I didn't even get $20 for a piece of paper. So they can't come to me and say I'm practicing without a license. But this is a true story. That's one story.
I believe it.
Yeah.
My husband and I are
Yeah.
real estate agents, and
Yeah.
I haven't seen Jane out there working.
Well, I can tell you a lot about Jane, but I won't go into it.
What's Judge Morfitt's first name?
James.
James Morfitt.
James Morfitt.
James and Jane Morfitt.
Jane and James. It's in that stuff that you got there, more heavier than in this. I tried to shorten this up.
All right. Well, let's go back and let you tell the story with a little more detail. When I want to toss a question in, remember, I'm not on a microphone, so my voice is not going to be heard in the movie. So you need to incorporate my question into your answer. That'll work for everybody. So if I say, "How's the weather?" instead of saying it's beautiful today, say the weather's beautiful today.
Yeah. Okay.
So you own some land.
Yes.
And you've been a businessman for
Yes.
years? You lived here
Well,
forever?
No, I've been all over. I've had all kinds of businesses: taverns, cafes, service stations, drove truck, sold cars, worked with the FBI for 12 years. I did just about everything.
Are you an Idaho native?
No, I'm from Missouri. I come to Idaho in '56 when I first got involved with the corruption up there.
Got it. So you still a show me person?
Yes, I'm still a show me person.
All right. And that comes in handy when you're fighting the judges in the courts.
That's right.
All right. So take it from there. You've got some land. You got a deed.
I got a deed to the place. Well, I'll go back.
Okay.
I had 16 acres. In 1989, they gave me a year to live because I had cancer. At that time, I sold my truck because I'd got a divorce in '86 and I bought a brand new 18-wheeler and I lived in it for 3 years. And I started getting weak. Well, I found out I had cancer and they told me I had a year to live. So I went and I bought 16 acres and I stocked it with cattle and and hogs, and I was going to die there. And my son and my daughter-in-law was there. Well, as things went on, I got cured of the cancer, and I went back driving truck for NACA because I wanted insurance. And I had a massive heart attack in '91, blew top part of my heart away. So luckily I had my farm, and I come back to my farm. Well, I was able to go back to work after my massive heart attack 2 months later. And in '92, my co-driver, two drunks hit his head on up at Tuttle, and I was in a sleeper, and it threw me out of the sleeper, and I damaged my head, and my gut went across the gear shift where I had open heart surgery, and that's what stopped me from going out the windshield. So I had to quit driving truck, because not from my heart, but because of the back of my head where I hit the sleeper and that. So I went back on the farm, and I'm waiting 4 years trying to collect insurance and that, and laying around there with no money. And in the meantime, of course, I ended up getting a divorce because they didn't want to live under those conditions, and there wasn't nothing I could do about it. And so I just lived out there and laid around, and the ceilings would leak water, and I couldn't do nothing about it. And so finally one day, a guy come up and said, "Hey, I want to buy your place." Well, everybody wants to finds out that you're in bad shape, they'll try to steal everything. So I said, well, heck, if I can sell it for $150,000 cash, I'll sell it, and that way I'll have one house to live in and one house to rent out. So I bought this house where this problem started. Well, I bought it to die there, and I happened to go back east on vacation. When I come back, that's when my irrigation ditch had been there for 40 years, I found out. It was filled in by the guy that bought the place to develop his place. Well, I go up there and I said, "What are you doing filling my ditch and stuff in?" He says, "You've abandoned your water." Well, he just bought his land. I hadn't abandoned no water. And I said, "You can't do that." He said, "Well, put your money where your mouth is." That started the whole situation. But at the time, I didn't know what all was involved. Well, this boundary next to me was 4.5 acres that belonged to the Hawaii Village subdivision. I didn't know that Randy Farber, the attorney, had got with this Max Weaver, and they were going to subdivide the 4.5 acres of his and 4.5 acres that was given as a park in 1972 to the Hawaii Village subdivision. Now you got to realize this park was a rural park because the Hawaii subdivision is in 1 acre tracts with horses and cattle and stuff like that. So the park, when you speak of a park, it wasn't a park with slides and stuff like that. They hauled in big hills for motorcycles, and horses could ride and stuff like that. Well, the next thing I know with this deal, well, here I found out that they were going to develop and open the road in front of me and make a road, and they were going to develop the 30 acres where my water had been going for 40 years. Well, I knew that I found out that Farber, the attorney, had embezzled this land from the city by 20 years later going in and paying 5 years back taxes. And the county had let him steal this land, the park, lot 16. Well, I go up there, and when I go to court, I'd filed charges, or the sheriff's department filed charges against Weaver for cementing my ditch in. Well, then he was scheduled to go to a jury trial. He pleaded not guilty. Well, I waited and waited and waited. 4 months I went in to talk to the prosecuting attorney about this ditch. How come my irrigation wasn't open? How come he still had it closed? And nobody would talk to me. Well, what happened was, I didn't know at the time until later, they thought I was my son, Frank Stafford, because he had been on drugs and he had been in trouble, and they didn't know I even existed. So when the complaint went across the prosecuting attorney's office, Frank Stafford, they thought, here's a druggie and no money or nothing else. They didn't even recognize it was me. Well, the day before jury trial, 4 months later, John Christian calls me up to the prosecuting attorney's office and says, "Mr. Stafford, we decided we're going to drop the case against Weaver regardless of what he does to you." And I says, "You can't do that." He said, "We can do anything we want." So what happened was, the next day, was jury trial scheduled, so I go up, and sure enough, it was still scheduled for jury trial. I walk into the courtroom. Nobody was in there to hear the case, Weaver or nobody there. So I go in the clerk's office and says, hey, is this State versus Weaver case going to be heard today? She said, yes, the jury's waiting to hear it. Go back in, they're going to hear the case. So I go back in. Well, Judge Sharon, has a couple cases. Pretty says, anybody know anything about this State versus Weaver case? And nobody said anything. Pretty soon, Miss Bond, who was new prosecutor at that time, Virginia Bond, she said, well, Your Honor, I think that case is dismissed. He said, I don't have no dismissal on it. It's scheduled for trial. I raised my hand, and he said, who are you? I said, I'm Frank Stafford. I'm the victim of this. And yesterday, John Christian called me up and lied to me and said that you guys had decided to dismiss this case regardless of what Weaver did to me, and he still damaged me, stealing my water, and got my ditch cemented off. And I recommend the case not dismissed. He says, case dismissed. He dismissed the case after saying he didn't even have a motion to dismiss the case. And that's the way it was. And this started the whole thing. So I went in, and I took my ditcher, which I had from the farm, and I was going to open up this ditch, which I have a constitutional right and a legal right to clean anything that blocks my water. So I bullheaded, and I got in my tractor and my ditcher, and I was going to take everything out of that ditch all the way back to Midway, which is my right, so I could get water. I get up there halfway, and here comes the sheriff. They had issued an injunction order against me. I couldn't go 50 feet from my own ditch, saying that I'd removed survey stakes and I was damaging Weaver's property, lot 16, that he had just bought from Farber, that Farber had embezzled from the city. So then I didn't know about Jane Morfitt deal yet. But then all of a sudden, here comes Jane Morfitt signs that I give you, showing Silverhawk Realty, Jane Morfitt, Doug Batt, and them developing Charmaine Springs. That's the 40 acres that where my water had been going all the time. I knew that Windstone Estate had went bankrupt, and they were ordered to pick up all my wastewater and pipe it downstream, which that's the law. So Windstone Estate had to too. So then it dawned on me why Weaver needed 17 feet to subdivide his 4.5 acres. The lot 16 that Randy Farber embezzled from the city for him, the bezel had to get rid of my water. And Jane Morfitt and them down there dividing that 30 acres into subdivision, these 48 seniors' house, had to get rid of all my water and pipe it downstream too. So what's the best way is go up above me, cement me off, no water comes down, they don't have to spend no money. Very plain and simple. And that's what started, and that's the whole deal. So anyhow, I kept trying and fighting with Morfitt, and what really got Morfitt mad is when I filed an appeal with Supreme Court. Supreme Court come back and said that I was statute of limitations up because I had to file within 6 months from fraud and deceit upon the court, because fraud and deceit had been caused because they didn't own the land they were suing me on. And to just give you an idea, a memorandum order from October 13th, 1998, Morfitt's ruling from the hearing that we had, he says Stafford didn't get permission from the city of Caldwell to dig a ditch on lot 16 nor any other political subdivision. Well, if I had to get permission to dig the ditch on lot 16, how come he awarded Weaver and Farber $5,000 and $8,200 for me damaging their property, lot 16? That's how stupid Morfitt rules, but that's how they do. They change the evidence to come out the way they want. Well, then I filed, he said that he wouldn't hear, he refused to let me hear a quiet title action. He said, we'll go ahead and have the hearing, and then you can come in later and file a quiet title. Well, when you're trying to figure a boundary line, you hear a quiet title first. You don't rule on something and then come back in to another case and have a quiet title on the same issues you just argued. But that's what he did. So then here, this goes in front of Goff, another judge. Goff comes into office and he says, I don't see why Stafford don't take his 10 feet back, because I was 10.65 feet on my own property according to meets and bounds of my deed. I don't know why Stafford don't take his 10 feet back and everybody be happy. I talked to Judge Morfitt, and Judge Morfitt said this and Judge Morfitt said that. Well, then he continued the case because Dorothy Bright wasn't there. He continued the case. Then when he come back after the case, him and Morfitt must have got together, because then he come up and ruled boundary by agreement that I had agreed with Weaver where the boundary was. Well, how come when I be in court all this time for a year and a half fighting Weaver for taking being to try to get my land, and then they come in and say I had agreed with Weaver on the land where the boundary was? But that was the order that Goff said that shot me down the tubes. Well, I appealed that. And of course, the Supreme Court, this Gerderez, who was district judge with Morfitt, was just appointed to Supreme Court Appeals Court. Then when this case that I appealed to Supreme Court, which my attorney refused to take it to Supreme Court, because Morfitt told him if he didn't shut me down, he never practiced in the whole state of Idaho. And then I've got this on tape, by the way. Then I went ahead and filed an appeal in the Supreme Court. That's when Gerderez was appointed to Appeals Court and heard my case in the Supreme Court and upheld Morfitt for issuing an injunction order against me that I couldn't file no pleading in the whole state of Idaho without his permission, and that Morfitt didn't have to disqualify himself because of personal interest, because Jane Morfitt didn't own none of the land that her signs and stuff was on. So she wasn't violating no right. She was still making money as a relative to the judge to eliminate Canon 2 and Canon 3. But the Judicial Council said they weren't committing no act. So I filed complaints with the Judicial Council. I filed complaints with everybody, and everybody upheld. But they had to cover up, and they do this all the time to take and protect their fellow peers down below. And this is what's happened in my case on the criminal corruption. But then Windmill, when I went and filed my verified complaint, 85-page verified complaint in federal court of all this against the city, county, state, Morfitt personally, Jane Morfitt personally, the prosecuting attorney, the sheriff's department, because when Morfitt sheriff sold my house finally, I had to bid against Morfitt's developer, Judge Morfitt's wife, to buy my own house back. And I bought it back for $60,000. But what really pissed him off is when I sold it for $150,000 after I bought it back.
Let me stop you for a second.
Excuse me.
Let me ask you a couple of questions. All right, first, the ditch that was filled in is on your land.
Right.
Is that undisputed?
That's undisputed. Been there 40 years.
Okay. And it's filled with cement.
Well, across it was cement. It was filled in with dirt. Okay. It was open all the time. My daughter lived there.
Why wasn't somebody put in jail for like trespassing on your property and damaging it by...
Norm Young, okay. Norm Young, Dave Young, the prosecutor's uncle, was a federal agent with Max Weaver that filled the ditch in, and they were good friends. Norm Young even come down and slapped me in the face and threatened to kill me with a pistol in my face, and the cops wouldn't even take statements from the witnesses or even arrest him, and no charge was ever filed for that.
So this whole thing started with people trespassing on your property and damaging your property, which of course, and nobody did anything about it, and then you get your life threatened to boot. Right,
but it wasn't my property because they swore that I had removed survey stakes, but I had 3 surveys that said it was my property. There was one surveyor that was 10.65 feet off, and my deed, for example, states you go south 366 feet, then you go west 23 feet, and then back north. So Skinner, the one Morfitt took and said I had to go by, it didn't go by the meets and bounds of my deed. It went 366 feet. Now in my deed it says to a center of an irrigation lateral. Anytime you got a monument marker like a ditch, that overrides meets and bounds. So when that deed says 366 feet to the center of an irrigation lateral, that center of the irrigation lateral is 17 feet further down, so that means my boundary goes 17 feet further down because that monument marker upholds meets and bounds. Do you follow me? That's the law. Okay, so they cut me off. Weaver needed that 17 feet for a road, so he comes in when he cuts my fence off, he puts a driveway across that 17 feet so he could have easement to get out because he couldn't subdivide his property without coming across my property. So there was another issue there.
Right. Do you have people who will testify you, or have they testified for you, saying that they did all this on your property?
That's right. It's
Yeah,
all
you
it's
got
all court
surveyors
documents.
or-
Oh yeah, I got 3 survey, and it's court documents on top of that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
Jane
Morfitt.
Jane Morfitt.
is a real estate agent.
Yep.
And did I understand you to say that she bid against you?
Her developer, Eldorado Development, bid against me to buy my own house back
All right, and how is she associated with El Dorado? Is she
because he was building houses for her.
Oh, okay. All right. So the person who was doing the construction on her
Her land,
residential housing development bids against you, which
Right.
means it's her bidding.
right.
And the judge said that wasn't a conflict?
The Judicial Council said it wasn't a conflict of interest even. The Supreme Court said it wasn't a conflict of interest. The Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, of course, Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals wouldn't even rule on the case. So they haven't even ruled on the case. They just said no judge voted to hear the case, so the case is dismissed. Since when does the judge get to say whether they hear a case or not? They can disqualify himself, but they're not the ones that name who's supposed to hear the case. I mean, that little order I've got there is so powerful that shows that they were so crooked even in Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals.
Well, they're very crooked there.
Well, that shows it because that's in writing. That's that. By the way, I was pro se, and they were supposed to take and send that to me by mail, and not on computer, and they didn't send me nothing.
Show the camera what you have here, because then your introduction of those things will enable me to drop the actual item over the film. So tell me what you got.
Okay, here's a picture of the Senior Citizen Newsletter, July 2005, stating where the developers of Charmaine Springs, 48 senior citizen houses, that's where that sign is, it says Jane Morfitt, Doug Batten, and Terry Reinhold. That is where they get $2.4 million over the next 10 years, plus they got $425,000 federal grant money. And Jane Morfitt got that herself. Okay.
And all this is made possible by Judge
Morfitt,
Morfitt,
her husband, who's handled my case and would not disqualify himself even after I filed motion to disqualify him in court. This here is another picture after I filed with the Judicial Council showing a different sign that they took down all these signs the minute I filed with the Judicial Council, and all her for sale signs, individual lots. This is when they put this back up again, but this top picture shows her for sale sign on that piece of property, where this next page shows at the top of it the 48 senior houses, and the hole on that picture is where they come on my property when Morfitt ordered it to be sold after I told him I couldn't sell it because of Morfitt's fouling up. He ordered my place to be sold at sheriff's sale, and I didn't even get my homestead exemption back, so that they had a free and clear deed to my place. So when they did sell it, I still didn't get my $50,000 homestead back, which by law I was entitled to. So they violated my constitutional rights there. Okay. This is a disqualification by Judge Gerderez when he was in with Morfitt in district court as a district judge before they appointed him to Supreme Court. And it's his own disqualification because of personal interest.
Right. He's disqualifying himself in a case that you and Weaver and Farber are involved in.
The same case all the way through, yes.
He disqualified himself from the same case.
Right. Mm-hmm.
All right.
In district court.
In district court.
Then he goes to Supreme Court and appointed a Supreme Court judge, and then he rules and upholds Morfitt in Supreme Court on the same case. And
so what you're telling me is, and I want you to say this in the soundbite, there's a judge named
Gerderez.
They should spell that. It's the first time Gerderez I've ever met. Judge Gerderez disqualified himself from being involved in a case because of personal interest in a district court, and then he turns around and issues 2 orders against me in the Supreme Court in exactly the
same cases. Right.
Say all of that. You said it, but it's kind of been in parts. So I want to get one soundbite that says
Okay.
what he did.
Judge Gerderez was in district court with Judge Morfitt, 3rd District Court. He disqualified himself in district court. Judge Morfitt was the head district court judge that appoints judges from the district to Supreme Court appeals. He appointed Gerderez to the Supreme Court Appeals Court. Right after that, he rules in Supreme Court on both of my cases against Morfitt on the same issues. And this is the proof.
That's just about as solid as it gets.
Right.
Just as solid as it gets.
Okay. Now, the next issue that's very important is going to Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals after Windmill came in and dismissed all 18 defendants when I was in the VA hospital dying of congestive heart failure, and I had got an extension. But I didn't get no notification of Windmill, no hearing, no nothing. He just dismissed them on his own. Out of district court down to magistrate court. He jerked my case out of magistrate federal court when he was in district federal court judge. So what made him come down in the magistrate court and take my case and dismiss it when I had a continuance on my case until I got out of the hospital or died or whatever? And then it goes to Ninth Circuit, and for 1.5 years I try to get an answer or a ruling. Then all of a sudden I get a ruling that no judge voted to hear my case, so the case was dismissed and I can't file no more records in the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals.
Now, is that a valid order?
No, it's not,
You want to explain
because it
why?
never was signed. Now, another issue is, with this whole deal, I was pro se. Pro se litigant is supposed to be mailed a copy of any papers out of the courts. I never got mailed nothing.
Have you had much experience over the years with federal courts, or is this your first experience?
This was my first appearance with federal court.
Did you notice any wrongdoing with the docket?
Yes, there was all kinds of wrongdoings. I called down there and nobody knew nothing. Every time I called down there, no one knew nothing. They didn't know where my case was, what was happening, or nothing.
Yeah, the clerk's offices of the federal courts are just, it's not that they're active participants. I don't think they do it on their own. I think they have to take directions from the judges.
Mm-hmm.
But I have, and many others have, dockets printed out, then you have subsequent dockets where things have magically disappeared. I've had any number of filings that have never been docketed, or they're filed when they receive them. So it's unbelievable what these people will do. What else you got in there?
Well, I've got stuff I want you. I've got my appellate brief to support that I filed with the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals. After I didn't hear nothing, I filed a appellate brief to support his petition for rehearing in bona. Because I didn't get no order or nothing. Couldn't get nothing, so I filed it. A petition, that's when it came up, with the order that no judge would hear the case or voted hear the case. And so I...
Are you familiar with Federal Rules of Civil Procedure 60?
Yes, I am.
Have you done a 60?
Yes, I did. That's
60B
what...
or a 60D?
I've subdivision 4, a fraud and deceit upon the court.
Okay, so you did a 60B.
You bet. And there's no statute of limitation on it. And there's no statute of limitation on Morfitt or Gerderez or anybody, because anytime there's fraud and deceit upon the court, that order is null and void. And that's the way my case stands right now. But who can you get to enforce it?
Yeah, well, has it been assigned to a judge?
No.
So you filed it.
Yeah, I filed it.
It hasn't been assigned to a judge.
Right. They denied to receive it.
Tell me how that happened. How did you file your case?
How
did you attempt to file it?
I filed it with an 85-page verified complaint with 611 documents as exhibits.
And did you personally deliver it to the federal courthouse?
I personally did.
And did you take the fee?
And I got it stamped.
And you got it stamped?
Stamped, received.
Now, was it assigned a case number at that time?
You bet. It was 10344.
And if you go into Pacer and look, does it show it to be an active lawsuit?
Yes, it does.
And what's been done on it?
Says it's been dismissed.
Did you ever receive an order of dismissal?
Just the order I got here that no judge would recommend, which is illegal.
From the Court of Appeals?
No.
You have to get an order from the
I didn't even
district
get no memorandum. I'm supposed to have a memorandum of law why they dismissed it,
Yeah.
regardless of whether they want to accept it.
But your order's from the Court of Appeals.
Right.
You can't file a lawsuit in the Court of Appeals. You had to file it in the district court.
I filed it to start with in district court. And when the Windmill dismissed it, I appealed it to the Ninth Circuit.
All right. Windmill is a judge?
Yes, Judge Windmill's the one that dismissed everything without a hearing or nothing. I was dying up in VA hospital.
All right. So he dismissed it. Then you took the appeal en banc.
They dismissed and appealed the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals.
All right. Your remaining option now is a 60D. Have you?
I'm familiar with that.
Now with 60D, you can go to another court. You have an option of going to Washington, D.C., which might, I'm not a lawyer, I can't give legal advice. We'll talk about it off camera.
Yeah. but it's just like now with 60D.
You still got to hope you find an honest judge.
There you go. That's what you're looking at. And with the tree the way it's been climbed and cut out every time to protect the lower people below, because if any one judge rules against anybody, there's a domino effect all the way down. And they don't want that, and they won't allow it.
You're on an elevator with, do you watch network television news at all?
Once in a while.
What network do you watch?
It just all depends. I don't.
You know who Diane Sawyer is?
Yeah.
Right. You're on an elevator on the 5th floor of a building with Diane Sawyer. You're going down the 1st floor. You've got 30 seconds to tell her your story in hopes that she might be interested in having them cover it. Tell me your story in 30 seconds if you can. Give it your best shot.
My story in 30 seconds is to take and eliminate the corruption that's been done to me in all the courts, all the way from the magistrate court in Canyon County clean to the Ninth Circuit Court and the federal court. And to take and get at least a legal ruling and to be heard. I have never been heard by a trial. I've requested 3 jury trials and never been heard by a jury. It's all been Morfitt's ruling by summary judgment. Everything summary judgment.
One of our proposals is that we're presenting to each state legislature is that anyone who requests a jury trial, there can't be a summary judgment.
That's good a deal. I've said this before. There shouldn't be.
Can't be a dismissal. Can't be a summary judgment. Let the judge try to explain what the law is to the jury, then let the jury decide if the judge is right or not.
That's what our constitutional rights are.
Yeah, we have the right to a trial by jury. And pro se parties, I researched every pro se federal case in Georgia for the last 32 years. Guess how many pro se plaintiffs won?
Probably lucky if one did.
0.
Yeah.
Guess how many pro se plaintiffs got a jury trial?
None.
0. 75% of them were dismissed on motions to dismiss.
Right.
The other 25% lost summary judgment. Those were cases, I'm positive, where the attorney knew he was going to win and just milked his client for attorney's fees until the summary judgment. They're just such slime balls.
All right. I'm giving you this tragedy reality of our corrupt judicial system. This is my story explaining how they go through the system, change the material facts and everything to get the ruling they want. Just like Morfitt said, boundary by agreement. How could it be boundary by agreement? But that made me guilty. Removing survey stakes when I was 10.65 feet on my own property by 3 surveys, but taking the one survey that admitted he made a mistake. These are changing the material facts. This is all in my story right here of my case and what they did and how they did it to make me crooked and to lose my property and spend all my money all the way to the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, all with a bunch of lies. But this tells how they do that and how they did it. And that's why I want you to have a copy of it.
Good. We want to post that on your movie listing page.
Right.
Which if you don't have yet, you soon will be
Yeah.
offered. And all this evidence can be put there. So let me remember to incorporate my question in your answer. You're supposed to be dead of cancer,
Half a heart and diabetes.
half a heart, traffic accident,
Diabetes.
and diabetes.
Mhm.
You've managed to survive all that, and only to have a judge take away just about everything from you.
Basically. Yeah.
Can you put that in a soundbite for me and say it?
Yes, I have never used my medical record as an excuse in this whole case, and that's one that I have a half a heart. I blowed top of my heart away in 19. I had cancer in '89 and was given a year to live. I survived that. I bought a farm. I had a massive heart attack, blowed top part of my heart away in '91. Then I went back to work 2 months later, and 2 drunks hit his head on up at Tuttle, and I got thrown out of the sleeper and run a gear shift in my gut, and that's what kept me from going out the windshield. And I damaged the back of my head. I was laid off. But I had my farm and my cattle and stuff, so I kept it going. And then I couldn't get no insurance money from the truck wreck or nothing else for 4 years. Couldn't get Social Security, so I finally had to sell my farm because I couldn't take care of it. And I bought these 2 places. And as of now, I've lost my '66 Mustang convertible. I had 23 years. Morfitt sold it to pay Weaver $5,000 on land that he didn't own. I had it for 23 years. He paid Farber $8,200 when Farber was representing himself as pro se attorney fees, which 121 does not allow no attorney fees for no pro se litigant. But other than that, I've went ahead and spent about $200,000 in 14 years of my life, going on 15. In the meantime, I've had divorce and stuff like that. But I've spent all my time on this case because I wanted to document every document that went through the court records, and I've got them. Everything from day one. I've got transcripts, just like, and I'll put it on there right now, was when I filed a motion for rehearing, and I went into the courtroom, and here sits Judge Morfitt, and here's a deputy sheriff, and here's a federal marshal. And I told my friend, I says, there's going to be trouble this morning. So I walk in there, and I get on the stand, and Judge Morfitt says, I've read your motion, and I made my decision. You're going to sit there, and you ain't going to say one word. And if you do, there's a marshal over there that's going to take you to jail. So I sat there and listened to him saying that I was sanctioned $1,500 for filing frivolous pleadings, and that's what they always come up with, frivolous pleadings, and that I was not going to get my motion for reconsideration. And so anyhow, I was tickled to death because I had that on transcript showing how he was acting like a kid throwing a temper tantrum. That was the way it seemed like to me because of what I was doing. And I walked out of the courtroom, and 3 attorneys shook my hands. I walked out the door and congratulated me. But I told him, I says, thank you, sir. Have a good day. That sort of got to him. And that's about the size of it.
May I ask how old you are?
72.
I'm going to ask you to try to do a little shorter soundbite. And here's what I'd like to have you say, if it's all right, and put it in your own words. I'm 72 years old. I was told I would die of cancer, but I haven't. I had a heart attack, a heart condition that should have killed me, but I'm still alive. I was in a head-on traffic accident, but I survived. Only to have hundreds of thousands of dollars of my money and my property stolen because of a corrupt judge by the name of whatever's his first name.
Judge Morfitt, James Morfitt.
Are you willing to say that?
Sure, I'll say it.
All right. I want to try to, it needs to be short because
Okay.
if it gets too long, it gets hard to plug into the spot I want to plug it into.
Okay.
All right, so let's give it a go.
Okay, I'm 72 years old. I've had cancer and given a year to live in '89. I had a massive heart attack, blowed top part of heart away in 91. And then in 92, I had a truck wreck and got thrown out of the sleeper and run a gear shift in my gut, and I'm still alive. Then I went and I got diabetes, and I'm still alive with that. I had 2 congested heart failures, life flighted to Seattle 2 times. Matter of fact, I was life flighted to Seattle about an hour after I filed my motion in Ninth Circuit Court or in federal court with the 85-page strip. I wouldn't go to Seattle and take a chance to die until I filed that in federal court. And I'm still alive, and it cost me a couple $100,000 and my Mustang and a marriage and everything else, but I'm still here and still fighting.
But what happened to you and by whom?
And this was all caused by Judge Jane Morfitt, Jane and James Morfitt. Yeah.
What does the term lawless America, how would you define it?
I would define it just like it says, lawless America. As of today, we do not have no law in the United States. It's all judges and lawyers trying to make a fortune. And it's all money, and it's big business. That's my opinion, a lawless America trying to correct that.
Do you know any lawyer jokes?
No,
Were you represented by an attorney prior to going pro se?
To start with, I filed him 8 years in the case.
You fired him after 8 years?
Errors in the case.
And how did your attorney do a good job for you?
No, he did not. Matter of fact, he wouldn't file my appeal, and I signed. He violated our contract. I only owed him $32,000. I signed over my place to him that he would for $50,000 he'd take it all the way to Supreme Court, and then he backed out when Morfitt threatened him to shut me down. He never practiced. So.
Did he keep what you signed over?
He kept the whole $60,000 except $1,900. I give the sheriff's department the $60,000 cashier's check, and I only owed him $32,000, and he kept the whole $60,000, sent me back $1,900, saying the rest was interest.
What was the name of this attorney?
Lawrence Serhall,
Lawrence.
in Boise, with Durr and Walters, Hal and Durr, in Boise.
You want to give any particular recommendation or warning to anybody who might use it?
I wouldn't use any of that in that office.
I don't mean to put you on the spot. If I ever ask a question anybody doesn't want to answer, just
I'll answer it. I ain't against answering it.
Prior to all this happening to you, had you ever had any dealings with the courts?
Just in northern Idaho, when I worked with the FBI, I was very much involved with the judges. And matter of fact, Judge Irvine was arrested and committed suicide up there because of the corruption. And I wasn't the one that caused him to die, but I did turn over a lot of information to the FBI. But that's when the sheriff's department then would stand watch while the burglars would break into hardware stores and stuff like that. And the prosecuting attorney, Dick Magnuson, was one of the crooks as well as everybody else. And it was all, and they had 9 whorehouses in Kellogg and 6 in Wallace. And everybody, the chief of police, Earl Wine, would come around every Monday morning, take 10% of all the gambling devices that was taken in, and they'd go back and split it amongst the city council and the mayor and the judge and that. If there was a ticket issued for $35, everybody got 5 here and 10 there of the ticket. And that's how northern Idaho worked back in the 50s and 60s. And
now it's not 5 and 10, it's 500,
well,
1,000.
well, the only thing about the difference between then and now is then it was in the open and everybody knew it. Here, the white collar covers it up with judges and lawyers. It's just like my case, they issued an order they couldn't print nothing in the whole state of Idaho about my case. So here we go, the newspaper, you can blame the media, but they've got a little bit of problems too because they have the orders that they can't print a lot of stuff.
Yeah, and what do you think about our First Amendment rights? Do we have any?
I don't think we have any now, no. We don't have no constitution whatsoever now.
I brought you a copy of the Idaho Constitution.
Is it worth the paper it's printed on?
By the way.
Not nowadays, it ain't.
All right. What else? What haven't we talked about that we should? Anything else you want to say? This is your pulpit. This is your chance.
Well, all I can say is we need a judicial.
Watch your microphone.
All I say is we need judicial accountability, and somehow we've got to get it. And I think it's just like everybody else feels, we got to get enough people together and enough legislation from the people up there, the right people, to pass legislation to put some teeth in and some enforcement in these judges and lawyers and prosecutors.
Before this experience, you had not been in court as a plaintiff or a defendant, is that?
No, I had not.
And you had dealings with the FBI that I guess.
I knew what was going on.
So did you expect it to be completely corrupt against you when you started?
Yes, that's why I documented everything in case it was, and that's why I got the documentation.
What would you say to other retired people out there of your age or older about if they haven't run into this?
The first thing I would tell anyone that hires an attorney is to demand and request every document coming and going through his office about a case, so that way you know and you've got it in case he screws over you. You've got the documentation there showing what has progressed And that'll tell you exactly how he has acted.
The phone calls.
Right, I'm talking about everything. All the agreements should be given so that you can protect yourself. The way it is, the average attorney will not give the average person anything. They'll tell, oh, I talked to John Doe's lawyer, or I did this, I did that. That shouldn't be done. It should not be talked to another lawyer unless you're there yourself. That's my opinion.
It's kind of like your medical. You have to watch out for your own interests.
That's right.
Medically, you certainly do in courts.
Right. Uh-huh.
What would you say to people who don't think that this stuff is real and it could never happen to them?
Well, I wrote a story, if this can happen to me, it can happen to you, and that's exactly the way I feel. Well, I don't feel it, I know it. I've seen it.
Do you have any hopes for Lawless America the Movie?
Yes, I do, and I think it's a wonderful thing. And I think we should keep supporting it and backing it and doing whatever we can to stay together. Uniform. Because every time I've started something, way back in the unions, back in northern Idaho, everybody's going to do something, but all of a sudden everybody peters out, and nobody's there. So you're standing by yourself. I've seen this happen 2 or 3 times. So we got to stick together.
Any questions from the peanut gallery?
You missed one wreck.
What?
You didn't tell them about your last car wreck.
I'm still taking therapy on that, so it ain't over with.
Oh, I picked up something.
What?
The bat that is also with the Moffat is related to Governor Bat.
It's also related to me.
Yeah, it's Norma too, yeah. Well, I know, but I
We
didn't want to
had
get
a
in there.
big fight.
Yeah, I've investigated all that. That's how I found out about Farber and all that from my experience with the FBI. I used to chase stolen guns and
Nepotism and inbredness of the
See, I would expect this in Louisiana. I wasn't expecting it up here in
Oh,
Idaho.
Idaho's way, I'm from the south. This is way worse than
Yeah.
Louisiana.
All right.
okay.
That's a wrap.